Okay, so we're going to do Pythagorean theorem. We're going to start with that today. Just an IMB entry in your notebook. So today's date, if it's Thursday, it's going to be 12/14/17. If it's Friday, then 12/15/17. The topic is going to be Pythagorean theorem, and it's going to be on page 16 of your IMB. So I'm going to move this a little bit. So Pythagorean theorem, it's only used with right triangles. And let's see, I want to make sure that we realize what each side is called. Right? So the two sides that make up the right angle are called the legs. So this is a leg, right? Because it's the vertical part of the right angle. And then this other side is a leg because it makes up the horizontal line of the right angle, which won't always be true. I shouldn't have said that because sometimes your right triangles will be tilted. And then I always have my students draw a dotted line across from the right angle because that's always going to be the hypotenuse. And we learned the past few days that if I take the side length of one of the legs and square it, and take the side length of the other leg and square it, and add those two areas together, I'll get the area of the square off the hypotenuse. So that's why we like to say leg squared plus leg squared equals hypotenuse squared. So if I take the length of one leg and square it, the length of the other leg and square it, add them together, I will always get the length of the hypotenuse squared. Oops, let me go back and move this one over. Vocabulary. You know some of this and some of it we've done before, but maybe just a different word. So that's going to be a right angle, is an angle that measures 90 degrees. Okay, the leg of a right triangle is, we're going to say legs because they are the sides of the triangle that meet to form the right angle. Angle. So, for instance, that would be a leg, and that would be a leg of a right triangle because they form the right angle, and then I'm just going to make a dotted line, which would be the hypotenuse because the hypotenuse is always straight across from the right angle. Hypotenuse. It's the side, it's always the longest side. Of a right triangle. And it's opposite the right angle. The square, the square root, for instance, the square root of 25 is 5. The square root of 81 is 9. So square root of 25 means what number can I multiply by itself and get 25? I'm going to have to do this one again. So you might want to take notes on this on the other side of your IMB if you have room. Basically, if the leg squared plus the leg squared equals what we consider the hypotenuse squared, then it's a right triangle. So I probably wouldn't actually say leg, because if it's not a right triangle, we can't call it a leg. So we'll call this side M, and we'll call this side N. We'll call this side P. So if we can have the if m squared, don't write this down, plus n squared equals p squared, then it's a right triangle. Because the Pythagorean theorem only works for the right triangle. So let me get an eraser. So they want to see if these two problems are those two triangles right triangles. Well, we're going to have to see, and this is where when I talked about checking equations, this is where it's going to come in. So does 5 squared plus 12 squared equal 13 squared? Remember, we're working down the side. So I'm just going to go ahead and simplify the left side. So that's 25 plus 144. Okay. And then 25 plus 144 is 169. So we're still asking, does that equal 13 squared? Well, what is 13 squared? Check your IMB and you'll find that 13 squared is 169. So yes, those side lengths form a right triangle. Okay. Let's go to the next one. So we're saying, does the length of 6 units and 9 units and 10 units, will that form a right triangle? So you're asking yourself again, does 6 squared plus 9 squared equal 10 squared? That's a question mark. 6 squared is 36. 9 squared is 81. And when I add them together, I get 107. Does that equal 10 squared? Well, 10 squared is 100. So that is not a true statement. So that is not a right triangle. Not a right triangle, because it doesn't satisfy the Pythagorean theorem. It doesn't satisfy leg squared plus leg squared equals hypotenuse squared. So that answer would be no, not a right triangle. Let's go move this over. So now we're going to solve for the length, and now be careful. This is, you know me, I'm picky, and this is how I'd like to see it done. All right, so for each one, example 3, yes, I want you to write leg squared plus leg squared equals hypotenuse squared. And for these, it's not going to matter too much because they're nice, they're not tilted, but a lot of times I like you to take go to the right angle and draw a line across so you know that this side is the hypotenuse. Okay, and we're going to call that x because I don't know what that side is. There's a question mark. So I'm going to say 8 squared plus 15 squared. Does that equal, or no, sorry, what is, not that, does that equal? We need to say that's going to equal the hypotenuse squared. I need to find the hypotenuse. So 64 is 8 squared plus 225 is 15 squared equals x squared. And then 64 plus 225 is 289 equals x squared. That's the area off the hypotenuse. That would be the area of the square. I don't want the area. I want the side length. So I'm going to have to take the square root of both sides. In A days, we talked about this. If you take the square root of something squared, you're just going to get that something. So the square root of x squared is just x. And the square root of 289 is 17. So the answer is 17 units. Okay, so that's how you find that one. If you need to pause and take notes, go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and erase this Oops, so that we can go on to the next one because I write big. And I'm going to hurry up because I'm time's short. All right, so for this one, we'll do it quick. We'll do, oops, I'm still at the eraser. Oh my gosh, Miss Mayberry. Pen. All right, good. So leg squared plus leg squared equals hypotenuse squared. So this is going to be 30 squared plus 40 squared equals x squared. Once again, hypotenuse is directly across the right angle. I don't know what it is, so that's going to be 900 plus 1600 equals x squared. 2500 equals x squared. I'll take the square root of both sides, and I'll get, up here, 50 equals x, so 50 units is the length of the hypotenuse. Always make sure the hypotenuse is the longest side. If not, you've done something wrong. All right, let's go to the next one. Once again, this is where a little bit more of a, oopsies. This will take a little bit, let's go Miss Mayberry, longer, all right? So now it just takes a little more algebra. So notice, I don't know this, oh jeez, Miss Mayberry. I don't know this side here. So that's my x. So if I have leg squared plus leg squared equals hypotenuse squared, I'm going to have 9 squared plus x squared equals 15 squared. So this is 81 plus x squared equals 225. Remember, what we do to one side of the equation, we have to do to the other because I want to get that x squared by itself. So x squared is going to equal 144. I'm going to take the square root of both sides, and I'll get x equals 12. So that side length is 12. Is the hypotenuse still the longest side? Yes. So let's say 12 units. So I know I did that right. Not, I could go back and check, but I know that it might not be, it is right, but that if I got something longer than the hypotenuse, I know to go back and check. So that at least fits that criteria. All right, so once again, I gotta hurry up. Let's do the next one. You guys can always stop and replay these though. So this one is x. The hypotenuse is the 25. Right? So leg squared plus leg squared equals hypotenuse squared. So I have 24 squared plus x squared equals 25 squared. Right? 24 squared is 576 plus x squared equals 625. Subtract 576 from both sides. What I do to one side, I have to do to the other. And then I'm going to get x squared equals 49. Then I'll have to take the square root of both sides to get that length. So x is going to equal 7 units. I'm sorry I went so fast. So these, when I'm looking for a leg, it takes a little more, couple more steps, but you guys should be able to do it. You're going to have a worksheet. There's going to be word problems. You will see that I've done a couple problems on your homework to use as examples, and please have your IMB in front of you. Please be great for the sub, and I want a good report. I'll see you guys next week. Thanks. Have a good weekend.